I'm the janitor at the weirdest school in the world, with terrifying rules. Imagine working a job where every moment feels like you're walking a tightrope between reality and nightmares. That's my life. I'm the janitor at Black Dawn Academy, and before you think this is just another boring school maintenance gig, let me stop you right there. Black Dawn isn't a normal school. It's a place where the rules aren't taught to the students. They're commands for survival. And unlike your usual school rulebook, breaking these rules doesn't get you detention. It gets you killed, or worse. Let me explain. On the surface, Black Dawn looks like any other prep school, albeit older and slightly more worn down. Brick walls crumble in places, hallways stretch longer than you'd think possible, and sometimes, classrooms you visited the day before seem to vanish overnight. The students? Quiet and obedient. The teachers? Guarded and unflinching. I took this job thinking it was a simple, mundane career. Mop a few hallways, scrub some desks, maybe take out the library trash. Easy, right? But during my first shift, I realized this was no ordinary school. Rules were plastered everywhere. Walls, bulletin boards, even on the bathroom stall doors. And they were bizarre. Stuff like, never clean after 3:33 a.m. Always knock 3 times before entering room 207. Say good morning to the shadows in the science lab. At first, I thought it was some kind of joke, quirky traditions, or maybe a school-wide prank to mess with the new guy. But it didn't take long for me to discover that these rules, they're deadly serious. And you'll learn that the hard way if you're not careful. Let me take you back to one of my first shifts. I was scrubbing gum off a desk in classroom 5B. Time's ticking along, and before I know it, I glance at the wall clock. 3:35 a.m. I froze, my mop slipping from my fingers as realization dawned. I'd broken rule #7, never clean after 3:33 a.m. My heart pounded. I laughed nervously. What could possibly happen? It's a rule about cleaning, for crying out loud. So I shrugged it off and kept working. Except, something changed. The once quiet hallway grew eerily cold. The fluorescent lights began flickering. And then the sound of footsteps echoed behind me, slow, deliberate. I turned around, but no one was there. Just empty space. The air felt heavier, charged with something unseen. The footsteps grew louder, coming from everywhere and nowhere. That's when I saw it, a figure in the distance. It had no face, no features. Just an inky black, faceless form standing in the middle of the hall, staring at me despite its lack of eyes. Every instinct screamed at me to run, and so I did. The halls twisted in directions I didn't recognize, doors locked behind me, and the figure moved faster, always gaining. My legs burned as I ran, but just as it reached out a shadowy arm, the 4 a.m. bell rang. The figure disappeared. The cold, oppressive air lifted. I was safe, for now. That night taught me an important lesson. The rules at Black Dawn Academy are there for a reason. They're not guidelines, they're lifelines. Since then, I've made it my mission to memorize every strange, chilling rule on that peeling rules wall. Take rule #12, for example. Always greet the shadows before entering the science lab. Why? Because they're watching. If they aren't acknowledged, they grow restless. And when they're restless, well, let's just say the last person who ignored them hasn't been seen since. Other rules are easier to follow, but deeply unsettling to think about. Like rule #18. Do not enter the teacher's lounge after the janitor leaves. Wait, but I'm the janitor. Who's cleaning the lounge after me? I've never had the courage to find out. Over the years, I've pieced together fragments of the school's history. Built nearly a century ago, Black Dawn was once a prestigious academy for ambitious, wealthy students. But rumors say something happened, a tragedy so horrific, it stained the very foundation of the school. Ever since, the academy has been different. There have been whispers of students and staff going missing, strange figures roaming the grounds, and that rules wall? Some say it appeared overnight. Not every moment here is pure terror. Sometimes, the absurdity of my job breaks through, like the time I found green ectoplasmic goo dripping from the ceilings of the math wing. Turns out ghosts are just as bad at geometry as the students. or when I had to fix a flickering light that turned out to be a poltergeist messily doing shadow puppets. It's not all doom and gloom, I guess. What's scarier than the rules you do know? The rules you don't. For instance, no one told me not to touch the paint on the locker doors. But the one time I tried scrubbing graffiti off a student's locker, the door screamed. Not a creak, not a groan, a blood-curdling scream. Locker 807 hasn't stopped rattling since. These unwritten rules are the ones that keep me up at night. Every decision I make weighs on me like my life depends on it, because it does. Let me tell you about room 104. It's locked at all hours, and no one, not even the headmaster, has the key. I've asked students and staff about it, but they avoid the topic like it's cursed. Sometimes, late at night, I hear faint whispers seeping from behind its door. And on particularly quiet nights, scratching. But whenever I shine my flashlight through the small window, it's empty. I once nearly tried to open the door. My fingers grazed the doorknob before a deep, guttural growl echoed from the other side. I haven't touched it since. The scariest nights are the ones when the clock strikes midnight and a loud bell tolls through the school. There's no reason for it, no event, no schedule, but whenever it rings, a visitor arrives. These visitors aren't human. One night, I saw a woman in a tattered dress floating through the library. Her head moved unnaturally, tilting side to side as she turned toward me. I didn't wait to see what she wanted. I locked myself in the supply closet until sunrise. In recent weeks, things have gotten worse. New rules appear on the wall every few days. Hallways stretch longer than they should, and doors now lead to places they shouldn't. It feels like the school itself is alive, reshaping, growing more dangerous. Whatever is happening, I know one thing for sure. These rules aren't just for our safety. They're barriers holding back something darker than I've ever encountered. Here's my dilemma. The paycheck isn't bad. The terror, though? It's getting unbearable. A part of me screams to leave this cursed place, pack my things, and never look back. But another part of me is terrified that if I leave, I'll break a rule I didn't even know existed, or maybe whatever darkness lies within Black Dawn will come looking for me. What would you do? If you were me, would you stay and follow the rules, or risk it all by leaving? And so, I wrap up another night at Black Dawn Academy. As I mop these cursed hallways, a faint noise catches my attention. A whisper. No, a laugh. It's coming closer. I'll leave you with this question. If you hear a sound that doesn't belong, do you investigate it or run the other way? Screen fades to black, the sound of heavy breathing and footsteps echoing as the video ends.